to form a realistic worldview, you got to take into account the fact that human beings are fallen.
It's Saturday, January 18th. You are back with Barney and Clyde at the Libation Station. We've got several topics to talk about today. We're going to talk about purity of vision and facts on the ground. Are the libertarian and conservative visions too quixotic for application in a complicated world? They really said that. We've got Trump's big tirade. We've got Senator McSally and her accusation calling CNN reporter a liberal hack. And bad ideas that will not die. Every idea Elizabeth Warren has ever proposed, including running for the presidency. We discuss what a real garbage human being dumpster fire
She's a piece of work, no doubt.
Yep, she's terrible.
All right. Yeah. This is episode 2, season 2, and we do this fortnightly and forthrightly right here at the Libation Station. So please pull up a chair, pour yourself something bracing, and join us for the next hour. And we always have a nice beverage. Last time it was a little later in the day, so we went with Manhattans.
Yeah.
Today it's a little earlier in the afternoon, so Clyde here brought some Zevia 0-calorie ginger root beer. And it's mighty fine stuff.
Yeah, it's a little on the warm side, but it's pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I've been
very nice.
Really watching the carbs and sugars, so
okay.
it helps out with that. But they're
very
not sponsoring us, they're not endorsing us, but it's fine quality product.
Long-timers know the basic premise, but anybody joining us for the first time, just real quickly, Clyde brings a libertarian perspective to the matters we discuss each time, and I bring a conservative perspective, which means there's a lot of Venn diagram overlap because we both set great store by human freedom, feel like it's the essential requirement for human flourishing.
Yeah, that's why we can converge on things like free market economics and individual liberties and stuff like that. Because that, like you said, that's the paramount condition for human flourishing.
You bet. There are things that fall outside the diagram. And those come up from time to time, but principally in the area of foreign policy, I think.
For the most part.
Yeah. So, and I'm conservative. My conservatism, part of what that means is social conservatism. So there's a little.
And I think both. We're going to dive into that a little bit. The similarities and differences a little bit while we talk about are the goals of both conservatives and libertarians.
Yeah.
Able to be reached in our... One
thing I think that, I don't know if this is the way to put this, it sounds like maybe I'm puffing us up or something, but one thing I think both liberals and conservatives can be proud, or not liberals and conservatives, libertarians and conservatives,
right.
I'm glad I caught that, can be proud of is that we're interested in principles. Mm-hmm. We're interested in having a core body of this works and this doesn't. This is right and this is wrong, and that kind of thing. From which we, as opposed to a whole lot of public figures and politicians and so forth, just kind of go through their entire careers, throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks and
winging it, thinking that they can control it.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting that you had a little slip of the tongue there and said liberal, because I think both. Sort of the small c conservative and the small l libertarian, they both have their roots in classical liberalism.
You bet.
Right. So the modern liberal is really not that liberal.
Right.
Maybe in some matters of social freedoms and romantic freedoms.
We have a lot of common ancestors: Frederick Bastiat and Ludwig von
Adam
Mises,
Smith,
and Adam
John
Smith.
Stuart
You
Mill.
bet. And so, well, anyway, this first segment, purity of vision and facts on the ground, and the way we frame the topic within it, are the libertarian and conservative visions too quixotic for application in a complicated world. The reason, my good Clyde, I was set on a train of thought that came to this was yesterday when we were discussing some of the things involved in the next topic we're going to talk about, which is Trump's tirade, the now famous Washington Post article of yesterday about how off the charts his approach to foreign policy is, and how advisor after advisor is just like, how do I tame this guy? How do I talk some sense into it? Anyway, but the first scene that Carol D. Lenig and Philip Rucker, the Washington Post writers who wrote this, and it's a very well written, it's rather exhaustive. I mean, they get into people's facial expressions and the pictures hanging on the wall in the conference room and all that. But you were immediately your focus went to the fact that these were military and intelligence and State Department figures, and your immediate inclination was to kind of the first thing that sticks out to me about them is they're a bunch of damn imperialists.
More crap from the war machine.
Yeah. Okay, and I understand that and I respect that. I see a little different, but it just got me to thinking, because when we did talk about this kind of thing in, I forget the segment, but last time I asked you, how would we set a baseline, set a cutoff point, if you will, at which our relations with any country, Iran, for existence, or for example, or North Korea, or any country that's been an adversary or an enemy, how would we set a baseline and say, okay, we're going to wipe the slate clean from X date? We're going to go back to when we had this particular tussle, and we're just going to stop there and start with a clean slate. And the whole, which means we'll bring our, we probably have troops in bases all around your country, and we're going to bring them all home, and we're going to enter into free trade with you, and all those wonderful things that libertarians would like to see. How could you possibly set up a baseline from which to wipe the slate clean? Easy for me to say.
Well, I mean, I think that you have to do what you were saying before. You have to have a set of core guiding principles.
Yeah. Okay.
And then you have to bloody stick to them, And as far as relationships that are soured with other nations, like North Korea is a good example. I can't remember who was making this point. I think it might have been Michael Malice. But anyway, it was that you could easily go to North Korea and say, the history that brought us here no longer exists. The people that brought us to this point no longer exist. Whatever brought tensions between the United States and North Korea no longer exists, and there's no reason for this conflict to continue.
Yeah.
And then you formally end the war, and you make some concessions. That might be moving military bases, it might be reducing troops, it might be whatever it is. But whatever you agree to, you do that.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
You get right on it. You don't just...
You get right on it, and you make good on your promises. You know what I mean? And you have to do that across administrations.
Yeah.
We can't have one president that says to Iran, here's a deal.
Yeah.
Stick to your end of the deal, and we will too. And then the next administration comes along and throws it out. And however you feel about that situation, it doesn't really matter. We're perceived as promise breakers.
Right. And whether they're justified in doing so or not, Iran can take the position of, whoa, wait a minute, we're experiencing severe cognitive dissonance here. Right. Your country just a couple years ago crafted this agreement with us. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's your agreement.
Yeah. Okay. I the further I got to think about it, though, I got to thinking about how, well, the whole reason the Tea Party came about, and then later this kind of mutant version of conservative frustration, called the phenomenon known as Trumpism. But it was all about, I'm so tired of Republican politicians never really addressing things like the debt or the reasons for it, the unfunded liabilities of our entitlements and various other issues. The whole concept of the rhino, and go along, get along Republican, and the whole business of, well, now there's only certain political realities that are political realities that make it, that put parameters on what we're able to do, and this, so that conservatives have a parallel problem or a parallel question that arises for them, just like the one I posed to you about as a libertarian. What would a cutoff be? What level of purity can a conservative realistically insist on? Social Security and the minimum wage, both the architect for both of those was a lady in the FDR administration named Frances Perkins, and she was a leftist. Yes, in a perfect world, we would have completely private. Private everything, completely free market. It's at what point does a conservative have to say, look, that's not going to happen. That bell's rung.
Right.
It can't be unrung.
Right.
Yeah.
We've said that on the podcast before. You can't unring the bell. And we also examined sort of what happened when we were talking about Ecuador a few episodes ago. We were talking about how they ended some subsidies for fuel, and people got the pitchforks out and went and burned the Capitol down. You know what I mean?
They do that on a fairly regular basis in France too.
So whether or not disbanding Social Security or
the minimum wage
or something like that, whether or not that's healthy for society in the long run, in the short term, there are people who are going to be hurt if you just cut it off tomorrow.
Sure.
And so I think you would invite a lot of civil unrest if you were to just impose libertarian or conservative utopia.
It would be like peeling a Band-Aid off a scab that wasn't ready for that to happen.
Yes, but that scab would be the entire country and the global economy.
Yeah. Which gets back to the basic point we're exploring here. Can you ever create a scenario where either of our visions could be possibly turned into reality?
Yeah. Well, there's sort of a small C conservative, versus the Republican, right? There's
there's a clear distinction between
versus the member of the Libertarian Party, and I think a lot of people in the Libertarian Party, and I suspect that this is the case with a lot of Republicans and probably Democrats too, is that they get into the party to get involved with shoving the needle back. You just push it back in the direction of what their vision of freedom is. Yeah. As far as it can go, and we're all aware it's not going all the way. Yeah. Right.
Well, and just due to the nature of the beast, politicians are bound to disappoint. I think that's true no matter what ideology or party we're talking about.
Yeah.
And, I think of Marco Rubio fooling with this common good capitalism bit. It's really nothing more than industrial policy ism dolled up in quasi-conservative language. And it's like, why are you fooling with that, Mario? Yeah.
Well, and you know what? I think that's absolutely true, and I think that we talked about would libertarians, if they became a party of note and were really filling a lot of seats in the House and Senate and really became a force to be reckoned with, would they act any differently once installed?
Right.
Once they're in the machine, once they're in the wood chipper. They say that you are an amalgam of the 5 people closest around you.
Yeah.
Once those people are all, Washington veterans.
Yeah.
Veterans of Washington, not actual veterans.
Right, but
would they be any different?
People entrenched in Beltway life. Yeah.
Yeah.
And apropos of that, and a point that I'd like to make that kind of launches from that is that the conservative vision is often described as being tragic. It's a tragic worldview, and I think that has its roots in the Christian notion that we're all fallen beings, that we all fall short of the glory of our Creator, and you just that's baked into anything. You gotta to form a realistic worldview, you gotta take into account the fact that human beings are fallen, and which eases one's disappointments a little,
Yeah, and things work in a cyclical sort of manner sometimes. So, it might be, if you look at it, we did have sort of a libertarian or classical liberal revolution. We had the Enlightenment.
Yeah.
It happened. And those were born out of great tyrannies. And, I think that's probably, if we were going to start from scratch again, start from a free society, it would only happen after the collapse or overthrow of a great tyranny.
Yeah.
And then you'd have something to conserve once you had your liberal society.
Yeah. Don't forget
classical liberal society.
Frederick Bastiat was born and grew up and wrote his books not too darn many years after the French Revolution, which brought in the Jacobins, people getting guillotined in the street, and then later the imperial period of the Napoleon Bonaparte and all that. Now, it wasn't, that was what was going on in France while he was being born and growing up. But he's one of the greatest free market thinkers we've ever had. It's interesting. Yeah. Well, what do we do?
We're doing. We're right at 15 minutes. So
okay.
Time to move along.
Well, we've got 2 topics under our next segment. This segment is "They Really Said That." It's one we do frequently, and because there's no shortage of people letting loose with their mouths in this world, and there's usually some content for that one. And we've got 2 today. I alluded to it earlier. Yesterday in the Washington Post, there was it's nothing real surprising. It's all like, yeah, I can see him saying that. Yeah, I can see him saying that. But it's such a richly concentrated picture of what the VSG, the Very Stable Genius, Carol D. Leonnig and Philip Rucker, who are both Pulitzer Prize-winning Washington Post reporters. And this is a pretty deep dive. It's well written and lots of detail and so forth. It's an excerpt from a book they're going to come out with pretty soon, A Very Stable Genius, Donald J. Trump's Testing of America. And the title of this article is "You're a Bunch of Dopes and Babies Inside Trump's Stunning Tirade Against Generals." Okay, and they set the scene. There is a room at the Pentagon called the Tank, and it's said to resemble a small corporate boardroom with a gleaming golden oak table and leather swivel armchairs and other mid-century stylings. It's where top brains of national security and defense get together to discuss the most pressing issues and in absolute private. And a bunch of people, original members of Trump's team, got together amongst themselves and says, let's get the big guy over here. I think we need to give him he doesn't seem to read much, and particularly much about history. And the whole notion of the post World War II international order that the United States was instrumental in bringing about. I don't know that he understands that kind of. And this is Trump organized his unorthodox worldview under the simplistic banner of America First. But Mattis, that would be Jim Mattis, former Secretary of Defense, Rex Tillerson, who for a little over a year at the beginning of the Trump administration was Secretary of State, and Cohn, what was Cohn's Gary Cohn, National Economic Council director. And so they invited him over and talks about him just before 10 on a scorching summer Thursday. Trump arrived at the Pentagon. He stepped out of his motorcade, walked along a corridor with portraits honoring former chairmen of the Joint Chief, and stepped inside the tank. And they started giving him a presentation. The opening line flashed on the screen, setting the tone. The post-war international rules-based order is the greatest gift of the greatest generation. And then Mattis gave a 20-minute briefing on the power of the NATO alliance to stabilize Europe and keep the United States safe. Steve Bannon, who is a career wild man, but at this time he was an informal advisor to the Trump campaign, or not to the Trump administration. Mm-hmm. He had been to the campaign, but he was in the room, and I'd be interested to know how Rucker and Leonnig were able to document what was these people's thought processes, but they say, "Oh baby, this is going to be effing wild," Bannon thought. If you stood up and threatened to shoot Trump, he couldn't say post-war rules-based international order. It's just not the way he thinks.
Right.
And So for the next 90 minutes, Mattis, Tillerson, and Cohn took turns trying to emphasize their points, pointing to charts and diagrams. They showed where U.S. personnel were positioned at military bases, CIA stations, and embassies, and how U.S. deployments fended off the threats of terror cells, nuclear blasts, and destabilizing enemies. He's sitting there listening to us, and all of a sudden he pipes up and says, when the subject got to South Korea, he says, "We should charge them rent." Everybody kind of looks at him, and he said, "We should make them pay for our soldiers. We should make money off of everything." And Trump proceeded to explain that NATO too was worthless. U.S. generals were letting the Allied members get away with murder. He said, "They're in arrears." Trump said, reverting to the language of real estate. He lifted both arms at his sides in frustration. Then he scolded top officials for the untold millions he believed they let slip through their fingers by allowing allies to avoid their obligations. "We're owed money you haven't been collecting. We'd go totally bankrupt if you had to. You'd go totally bankrupt if you had to own your own business." More broadly, Mattis argued that the NATO alliance was serving not only to protect Western Europe, it protected America too. "It's what keeps us safe," Mattis said. Cohn tried to explain to Trump that he needed to see the value of trade deals, pro-free trade deals. "These are commitments that help keep us safe," Cohn said. Bannon interjected, "Stop. All you guys talk about these great things are our partner. I want you to name me now one country and one company that's going to have his back." This whole business of support the great lead, the dear leader.
Yeah. You were talking about Talleyrand last time. I guess a parallel there between him and Bannon.
But I won't. That sets the table. You get enough of the. But Trump blurted out. He goes, "You're all losers. You don't know how to win anymore. And we spent $7 trillion. They're ripping us off. Where's the effing oil?" As if. I mean. Everybody that accuses the United States of going to war for oil in the Middle East, he's given them fodder.
But he's finally saying that's what people hate about Trump is they either love it or hate it.
He puts it in vulgar terms, but
he says what we're doing. He says what it's about. He's the first one to come out and say it's about resources, it's about money. Let's start collecting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because he is now in charge of the empire. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He is seeing that the balance sheet isn't adding up very well. That it's not funneling back to Rome. And I would almost be with him on this if it wasn't posed as they owe us money and we should be capitalizing and we can sell this service to the rest of the world. We just have to be harder about collecting our fees. Like, no, we should be closing down our imperial presence throughout the world. We should be backing off the amount of that we expend. But we shouldn't be charging a fee for service to provide military security.
It turns the United States military into a mercenary organization. So that, guys signing up to, are.
Yeah, we're supposed to just go and steal the poppies and sell drugs to the world. Like a civilized society.
But Trump views everything in terms of deals and winning and losing, and thinks America is. He views America as America Inc.
But nobody cares, though. Nobody cares about any of this. The voting population, they don't care about this. They love this because he stood there with all this.
And Mike Pence was there, and everybody who was a big shot had their entire staff with them. And
he to sit there in front of the generals in their uniforms and the Secretary of State
and call them losers and
the Vice
babies.
President and say, "You guys are all a bunch of losers and babies." I mean, talk about brass balls, man. It's unbelievable, and that's what people like about Trump.
They do.
They don't care what he stands for. They care that he's alpha dog.
Yeah, you bet. That's exactly.
They'll follow him anywhere.
Yes. Yeah. This stuff doesn't. It may turn off some, disgust some, but there's a lot of people that fires them up even more.
Oh yeah.
Oh man, that's my man.
And I don't think he's wrong for a lot of this. Like he says 152 years after Lincoln hatched plans to preserve the Union, President Trump's advisors staged an intervention inside the tank to try to preserve the world order. You know what I mean? I'm saying you know what I mean too much. But like, I don't understand what that means. Preserve the world order. You know, so far these are the people who've completely destabilized the Middle East. I think Israel is less safe than they've ever been. I mean, what world order are they preserving?
Well, I think
Russia are
they're
at a post-Soviet low.
Yeah, they're looking at the overall arc of the state of the world since 1945.
But where is lying about Assad in that arc? And where is supporting a Saudi blockade that's causing a genocide in Yemen in that arc, and where's the blowback that comes to us in the form of things like 9/11 in that arc?
I kind of course, this is outside the overlap, and this is where we do differ. But for me, I kind of look at that we have two types, or maybe tiers, or circles of allies. The innermost circle are those who most closely share our values. The English-speaking countries, certainly the UK and Canada and Australia and so forth. And
sort of like, rather than just English-speaking, those are like the British common law countries.
Yes,
right?
you bet. Yeah. Not only the language, but the
value set.
Exactly. Yeah. That we all, everybody understands the value of the Magna Carta getting signed in 1215 and on up from there, and the Glorious Revolution in England in the 1680s and all that. They all have that in common. All of us, us and Canadians and Australians and so forth.
You always drop great history on me when you're here. I love it.
Okay. Thanks. But that's our inner circle. And Israel, I would say, because Israel's a Western nation. It's in the smack dab in the middle of the Middle East, but they got a representative democracy and at least a somewhat free market economy, more than they used to, and Judeo-Christian roots and all that good stuff. The most Western countries in the world are our closest allies. Then there's an outer ring, allies that we have to hold our nose to be allies with, such as Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
I mean, I think at least our better presidents have understood. God, I don't like this at all, because I know that they don't let women drive and they cut people's hands off for shoplifting and
but they end up like the Afghanistan papers again. If you go back to that stuff and you see that three administrations have been lying to the world about what's going on.
We're on the verge of stabilizing this place. Hang on, everybody.
They have no idea who the enemy even is.
Yeah.
And they arm Al Qaeda in Syria in order to fight the Assad government. You know what I mean? Like it's so stupid, and it's so anti-freedom. I mean, if it wasn't Trump in there going, we should be,
getting money for this.
We should be getting money for this, just like the Raytheons and the Lockheed Martins. We should be just, selling war for profit, rather than doing that. But if it wasn't that situation, I would love to have a president that was in there. You guys are a bunch of tyrants. You guys are a bunch of losers and scumbags and murderers, and you're horrible, horrible people. And now we'll start reducing the imperial presence around the world.
Okay. Well, that could easily lead into a whole other discussion. But for me, the big point was, I mean, this guy, he doesn't read. He doesn't think about history. He doesn't remember what he said last week. I mean, and it's an eye-opening article. I would recommend it to everybody. And it's an excerpt from a book that's going to be coming out soon.
I want to get a hold of that book, but one of the things that they were talking about in there were, they had put together this chart or this presentation with all these images that they thought he would really resonate with, and these types of graphics. And it's like, you're treating him like a freaking kindergartner, and he's kind of a dummy in some ways, right? But he gets treated like that all the time, and he's bloody sick of it, and he's in a position of power. Of course he went off on you guys. You treated him like a friggin' child.
Yeah. That I can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad it backfired on him. Hell with him.
Okay. What do we got?
Oh, so do you want to move to...
Yes, well, we have another one under the same segment title. Yeah.
Yeah.
They really said that. Senator Martha McSally. Do we have the clip for the people?
Go ahead and introduce the.
Okay. There's a reporter for CNN named Manu Raju, who he's got a track record as a biased reporter, no doubt about it. But he's not one of the big egregious ones. He's not like Robert Acosta or Don Lemon or somebody like that. He's relatively benign when you frame it that way, as CNN reporters go.
As they go.
Right.
Yeah. And they don't go very far.
Plus, he and Senator McSally have no past, have no record of being at odds with each other. I don't know that they've even had that much contact.
Right.
But he approached her in a Senate hallway as she was headed to a meeting or something. But said, Senator, where do you stand on the Senate when the Senate trial, impeachment trial begins, calling additional witnesses that they didn't call during the House portion? And she blew him up saying, "Oh, you're a liberal hack. I'm not talking to you." And it just seems kind of strange. Even if she wanted to get that point across, she could have thrown in some, backhanded praise. Well, you're the consummate liberal hack, but in answer to your question, here's where I stand on that matter, and answered his question respectfully. But to just dismiss it.
Yeah, you want to hear the
yes.
Let's
let the folks hear.
Okay, so they're walking down the hall here, and
Senator McSally, should the Senate consider new evidence as part of the impeachment trial?
Man, you're a liberal hack. I'm not talking to you.
You're not going to comment?
So she just says, "You're a liberal hack. I'm not talking to you," and goes into the room, and then he says, "Yeah, you're not going to comment," and she says it again. She says, "You're a liberal hack."
Yeah.
And CNN just went full butt on this thing.
You bet. Yeah, that was their opportunity to preen and play the victim, and
they did. They spent a day or two just talking about this topic as though there weren't other things in the world going on.
Exactly. The other side of the coin is, I don't know if she had just had a bad day, or I think a big motivation on her part was that she's running way behind in the polls against her Democrat opponent, Mark Kelly, for the Senate seat. He's got a lot more in his campaign coffers, and I think he's polling better. And she felt the need to kind of throw a Hail Mary pass and ingratiate herself more with the Trump base, which they, as we were discussing, they love that kind of thing, calling people derogatory terms, and
they like a show of dominance.
So and she started her campaign coffers have filled up in the 2 days since she did it.
Nice.
A lot of contributions have been coming in.
It's hilarious. You can't see that coming. The more and more that CNN squirms, the more that's going to happen. They don't realize it. They create their own quicksand. It's insane.
Yeah.
You want to hear a couple more of their...
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
Their talking heads.
Sure.
Talking?
You bet.
All right, here's Tapper and Blitzer talking.
Okay.
These guys are fools.
McSally just calls Manu Raju, respected widely on Capitol Hill by Democrats and Republicans, calls him a nasty name.
A nasty name? Oh, my God.
That's
the nastiest name.
Like journalists?
Such a nasty name. Called him a liberal.
Liberal hack. Yeah, I mean, talk about the supreme insult.
This is like, these are words you could use on Saturday morning cartoons. And this is not those
I mean,
anymore,
done in a context of mutual respect, you could even say that to a friend that had different views than you did, Yeah.
Seriously, it's not like harsh language.
No.
And the reason, I think the reason that
it sure gave Jake Tapper a case of the vapors.
But they take it that way because they know what awful spinsters they are.
Yeah.
That's why they've got to make all this case that they're not. Otherwise, they could let it blow off.
Yeah.
All right, so let's listen to
the great Anderson Cooper.
And writhing in his butthurt.
Senator Martha McSally, sadly, Sally's onto the list. She's a Republican from Arizona who, on the day that President Trump went on trial for, among other things, his contempt for the Constitution and the rule of law, revealed her contempt for...
First of all, there's no constitution or rule of law involved in the impeachment situation. He didn't violate the Constitution, and he didn't violate any laws. And they're not accusing him of having violated any laws.
Right.
Professionalism, one of democracy's core tenets, a free and professional press just doing
A professional
its job.
press is one of the core tenets of our society. You have to have a professional press. Did you know that? I wonder where that is in the Constitution.
Yeah.
In the halls of Congress. This is what happened when our CNN colleague Manu Raju dared to ask the senator a very straightforward and very simple question.
Senator McSally, should the Senate consider new evidence as part of the impeachment trial? You're not going to comment about this?
The way it just
A
kind of...
liberal hack. That's
Liberal
what Senator
hack.
McSally called
Right.
Manu. Now, for the record, Manu Raju is not just an incredibly fair and responsible journalist. He also happens to be a really good human being and a very nice person.
He's
incredibly polite, asking public officials questions that they often do not want to be asked. But you know what? They're public officials. That's part of their job. And by the way, the question that he asked, it wasn't exactly what Sarah Palin used to like to call a gotcha question, which weren't actually gotcha questions at all. Should the Senate consider new evidence as part of the impeachment trial? Wow.
I think this is really telling coming up here.
If you can't answer that question, maybe you shouldn't have been elected to the Senate. What? Oh. Sorry. Martha McSally actually wasn't elected to the Senate. She actually tried to get elected, but she lost. I forgot that. She lost actually to a Democrat. She only has the privilege of walking the halls of the Senate and calling others a hack because she was appointed to the job by the governor of Arizona to fill the seat left vacant when John Kyle, who had been temporarily filling the seat of the late Senator John McCain, retired. Now, I didn't know much about McSally because her record in the Senate is pretty thin.
Okay, so there's more to that, but I'll cut it off there.
I do. I will give Cooper kudos for one thing, which is that Raju's question was a straightforward act of journalism, and it was not a gotcha question. It was
But he's probably a liberal hack. But so anyway, I've been thinking about this, okay, and I think that they're making such a big deal out of this because she's a juror in the impeachment.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So she is going to obviously she's going to vote with Trump, right? So she's not going to proceed or vote to proceed with removal from office. They know that. So they have to do the same thing that they did with the 2016 election, and that is they have to discredit her, for one. Her vote, doesn't count because she's not really elected.
Yeah.
Right? It's not fair that she's even in there because, she was appointed and not elected by the people. So they're doing this nullification thing, right? And then just like they did with the 2016 election, Hillary got the popular vote. She's the real president, and all this is a farce. So they're already justifying their loss.
Yeah.
With how the other side cheated, being a nasty, characterless, whatever.
Boy, I tell you, this world's full of goofy people.
It sure is.
Yeah, I mean, there is nobody, which kind of gets back to our first segment where we were talking about purity of vision, and there's nobody that doesn't wind up these days just reverting to tribalism and not even bothering to talk about principles anymore.
Yeah.
They hitch their wagon to one supposed savior or another, and
it's weird again that maybe it's the people that they're around, because she seemed I don't know anything about this woman, but from what I read, it seemed like she was fairly moderate, fairly middle of the road.
Yeah.
Before like last year or whatever. I watched her on the Laura Ingraham program, and I don't know if they were doing coke backstage or what. But they both had this like stuck smile on, like this frozen coke smile, and they were just like super like this fake happy. And just, I don't know, man. It was so strange.
That's the kind of thing you get, though. in the Beltway. Yeah.
I guess you're on TV and whatever,
Yeah.
but it's probably not used to getting so much notoriety. But
Okay.
Anyway.
Well, we wanted to leave plenty of time for segment 4,
Yes,
or
we-
topic 4. We've got 3 segments. We just did 2 topics under. They really said that. But how are we doing on time?
we're good. We're a little ahead of schedule, so I think that's going to
Okay, that's not bad because I think we've got plenty of
enough.
content for bad ideas that will
And
not die.
if we don't have enough content, then I'm sure Elizabeth Warren will throw some more out in the next 20 minutes.
Yeah, maybe, she'll help us in real time here. Elizabeth Warren was a law professor at Harvard for many years and then decided to jump into politics. It's interesting that she started getting involved in public policy about the time she quit being a Republican. And that, when she was in her late 40s in the 1990s.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah. Well, you got a lot to say about her. I'm going to let you take this.
I'm sorry. I just think that the evidence is piling up that Elizabeth Warren is just the garbagiest of garbage humans.
She does have a truth problem. I mean, the things she has told falsehoods about are numerous.
She has a problem with the truth, that's for sure. I think this is probably going to play a little blurb as I back it out. Okay, got it. So we got some clips of her and Bernie. So what happens is she claims during the debate that Bernie said a woman couldn't be president. He says he never said that, and they
got into a tussle after the debate was over.
Yeah. So I got both clips. So let's listen to Bernie and Warren at the debate.
During the debate, okay.
This is the debate.
Warren confirmed in a statement that in 2018 you told her that you did not believe that a woman could win the election. Why did you say that?
Well, as a matter of fact, I didn't say it. And I don't want to waste a whole lot of time on this because this is what Donald Trump and maybe some of the media want. Anybody knows me, knows that it's incomprehensible that I would think that a woman could not be president of the United States. Go to YouTube today. There's some video of me 30 years ago talking about how a woman could become president of the United States. In 2015, I deferred, in fact, to Senator Warren. There was a movement to draft Senator Warren to run for president. And you know what? I said, stayed back. Senator Warren decided not to run, and I did. I did run afterwards.
Senator Sanders.
Now listen to what they do.
Sanders,
Listen.
I do want to be clear here.
Listen to how the moderator throws him right under the bus.
Okay.
You're saying that you never told Senator Warren that a woman could not win the election.
That is correct.
Senator Warren, what did you think when Senator Sanders told you a woman could not win the election?
Can you freaking believe that?
Yeah.
She's just like, oh, you never said that? What did you think when he said that? Because clearly he said that to big, awful man. So man, with your manness and your Y chromosome.
Yeah, I mean, she just assumes that she'd just been told a lie by Bernie Sanders. Yeah. The moderator does, yeah.
So then they're not backstage, but the debate's ending. The
crowd is clearing out in the auditorium.
Right, everybody's clearing out. Everybody's clearing off the stage. They're acting like they're all friends up there and stuff. So Warren goes up to Sanders, and he reaches out his hand to shake her hand. Like she's gonna say something to him. Yeah. They're gonna shake hands, and she's gonna say something. It's probably loud in there, so she's gonna say something into his ear or something like that. And she clearly avoids shaking his hand, just pulls it away. And then the mics are still live, so you can hear what she says.
I think you called me a liar on national TV. I think you called me a liar on national TV.
Let's not do it right now. You want to have that discussion? We'll have that discussion. You called me. You told me. All right, let's not do it now.
So I'm with Sanders on this one.
Yeah.
He's like, let's not do this right now. Mm-hmm. This is a bad time to do this. If you started this, you brought this out. His record, I don't like the man. I don't like his policies, but his record is, I mean, you can't make this case that he would say this thing.
Yeah. Oh no, that's we've before we began recording today, and also a couple of times during our conversation since the podcast started, we've talked about whether people walk their talk and really believe what they're saying,
right.
or to what degree does phoniness enter into what they're doing, and so forth. Bernie Sanders is the real deal.
He's the real deal.
I don't ever want his vision to be imposed on this country, but it's his vision. He really and truly believes it.
You can't say he's not sincere.
Oh no, he honeymooned in the Soviet Union. He's used to go on fact-finding missions to the Sandinista Nicaragua regime. I mean, he's the real deal.
Yeah, he is a straight-up communist.
Yeah,
and it's apparent in his language, because he doesn't talk about billionaires. He doesn't talk about the rich. He doesn't talk about the wealthy. He talks about the billionaire class. This is class warfare for him.
Yeah.
And I cannot stand Bernie Sanders, but my God,
he's the real deal.
He's at least authentic about what he is and who he is and what he believes.
And now, like we were saying,
I don't know.
These
aren't radical ideas.
There is the small matter of the fact that he's a billionaire himself, or a
millionaire. Yeah.
But anyway, and we were talking about Sanders. I don't know that she had a conversion experience, because she did.
You mean Warren?
Warren, excuse me. Have a track record of voting for some Democrats. She supported Jimmy Carter in 1980 while she was still a Republican. But she had a fairly big shift when she started as a concerned citizen, getting involved in some issues, public policy issues, and then which she got ever more deeply involved and finally started running for office and so forth. Mm-hmm. It was about that time that she became a Democrat. She first came to my attention during the Obama years. About the same time he did his "You Didn't Build That." She gave a speech on a very similar theme. Mm-hmm. She talked about how the corporations, businesses owe something back to, I don't know, the world or society or us or something, because we paved the roads and put in that allow you and your workers to drive to your plant every day, and we've set up and financed a police force to make sure marauding gangs don't tear up your place, and so we which gets back to this old business leftists like it comes up a lot with education. When you start talking about us freedom lover types, libertarians and conservatives start talking about, why don't we privatize education to the max? Wouldn't that introduce competition and stuff? And they always go, oh, you can't be doing that. Education's a public good, like roads or something. They always go back to this, and some you've had. I know you, because I have, and I know you have Facebook tangles with people who talk about, oh, well, roads are socialist, and no, they're not.
And maybe they should be privatized.
Exactly. Yeah. Once again, now we're in our Venn diagram.
Maybe you took a whole bunch of money out of society that these giant corporations you loathe so much would have had to spend in order to get product from one place to another, and maybe you screwed it all up.
I'm for seeing what we can privatize as much as possible.
Yeah.
You bet.
But with everything on the nation's plate, people always want to get me bogged down in roads conversations. I know you're not, but
that was
bigger fish to fry.
But that was the gist of what Warren was saying in this, that corporations ought to be just fine with us taxing them a lot more because we built roads and maintained a police force. Mm-hmm. I think she also even brought up schools, and we had public schools that we educated your employees.
A lot of those companies have to re-educate people.
I know.
You know what I mean, because they've done such a bad job. But
then she's gone on to of course, since she's been running for president, forgiving student loans, canceling them. Mm-hmm. I think she's even used the word cancel. You can't cancel a student debt. Right. Somebody, some dollars have to rush in from somewhere to fill that vacuum.
Well, she's one of the people who would have supported, if she didn't support it directly, she would have supported the subsidization of student loans and the guarantees, right? So more people get access to student loans when the providers know that they can't lose their money. Basically,
Right.
they're federally guaranteed. So that's why we're in the situation of high tuition, right? That's why we're in the situation of these loan companies profiteering off of students, and why the federal government's getting washed for the money is because of people like Warren, who don't know their ass from a hole in the ground, and they make these insane laws that protect giant corporations that they claim to loathe.
I know.
Like Sally Mae and the student loan providers.
You bet. And I think we most definitely have to take a moment to just kind of run through a list of her most glaring lies.
Yes.
There is the big one about having Cherokee ethnicity in her makeup, and she's had to apologize for lying about it.
Yeah.
There's the business about saying she was let go when she was a school teacher early in her life by a school system that found out she was pregnant. That's not how that worked. The most egregious lie for my money, even if she talked like a right winger that I'd otherwise love or something, but the biggest everything, no matter what else was or was not the case about her, the fact that she said that Michael Brown was murdered in Ferguson, Missouri. He was not. A grand jury and Obama's own Justice Department, led by Eric Holder, did a thorough investigation, and Officer Darren Wilson was defending himself when Michael Brown got shot.
I think the left should be outraged at the egregious lie that she told by assuming a culture that was not hers. And I think it's especially bad because she sort of doubled down on it. She took this DNA test. Trump said, I'll donate $1 million to some charity if you take the DNA test.
I remember that.
She eventually took it, and it came back that she was like 1,024th Native American. Which I assume is like in the margin of error. Like, you take those DNA tests, and even, Caucasian people like you and me would have like slivers of African and slivers of this and that and stuff like that. So I'm sure that's within the margin of error. But she assumes an entire culture based on that situation. And that's their definition of cultural appropriation. It's not some white lady learning yoga. It's somebody stealing things and making it their own and benefiting it from a way that makes it look ridiculous.
She even had a recipe published in a cookbook.
I want to talk about those.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Pow Wow Chow.
Pow Wow Chow.
And it's not even some recipe that she has had for years or her family did or anything. She got it out of some other cookbook.
Yeah, so I would like to read some reviews from Pow Wow Chow on Amazon.
Oh, please do.
Okay. Cultural appropriation is live and well. The author really knows how to pick the bones of an oppressed minority. High cheekbones for 2020 writes, well, the recipient sucked, but the pictures were awesome. Raw deer, skinned rabbit, buffalo turd. Unfortunately, my female yuppie identity politics and veganism won't eat this stuff. But you put the book in a pillowcase and with a couple of bike locks, it makes a great politically correct assault weapon.
I like that.
One says, best Peruvian cookbook out there. Excellent Peruvian recipes submitted by America's favorite 1024th Peruvian. Let's see. This person says, decent cookbook, save for the strange fact that most of the recipes are measured in unusual fractions, i.e. 1/1024th of an ounce of flour. Cherokee native cake recipe, yummy. 1 cup brown sugar, 1/1024th cup flour, white flour. Elizabeth Warren apparently plagiarized 3 of these recipes, 2 from New York Times, the others from 1959 Better Homes and Gardens.
And she's brazen.
Oh yeah, it's terrible.
She really doesn't seem to care if she gets caught in these things.
There's a poem too. Lizzie Warren's One Fine Cook. Her recipes are in a book. The book is titled Pow Wow Chow. The meals therein make you say how. Open it and you will see meals from Mohawk, Cherokee, Blackfoot, Hopi, Abenaki, even those that sell tobacco. With Within this tome, you find a spree of long-held secret recipes, each one an heirloom family dish containing pony, dog, or fish. Liz's meals aren't made with maize. They date from when the gourmet craze became our nation's cooking passion and arcane meals came into fashion. Find inside this gourmet bomblet Elizabeth's cold crab meat omelet. This tasty treat may be delicious, but its origin is suspicious. That she includes it is quite zany. The recipe was by Chef Franey. 'Twas printed for the world to use in the New York Daily News, and published many moons before. She says it came from family lore. Oh, so tempting, not the meal, but the recipe to steal. Another's work than chutzpah to call it hers, a lazy squaw. That's pretty funny.
It is. I like
and
that.
that's
That
still in the Amazon reviews.
Okay.
So that's good stuff. So anyway, so Sanders should have said, "You're goddamn right. I called you a liar. You are a lying liar. You lied about my character. You lied about you're lying about being a true progressive. You pretend that Donald Trump is the worst thing that's ever happened to American society, but you're absent from all of your votes." Let's look at that real quick.
Okay.
Is it okay?
Sure, absolutely.
Sorry if I'm going off too much, but I just look at her voting record here.
Sure.
And just look at all these absents. Did not vote, 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 did not vote.
Wow, that is a lot of did
it's
not
just
votes.
a lot of yeah. So she's not working. That's her biggest lie, is she's pretending that she's working, and she's bloody well not. Which I'm glad.
Yeah. Yeah. She would not vote in a way that you and I'd be pleased
The
with.
less she votes, the better, I think. But still, it's like, how do your constituents feel about that?
Yeah.
You're not standing up for anybody if you're not voting.
Yeah. And her little attempts to appear authentic and like the little video she did in her kitchen. Excuse me, I'm going to go get a beer and all that.
Yeah.
So.
Spare me.
Exactly.
I mean, but that's the thing. It's like these people all the politicians these days are getting burnt by the fact that they still are acting like social media and internet access worldwide don't exist.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They think they can keep pulling the wool over people's eyes.
Yeah.
But they can't do it.
Yeah.
People are finding out. They can easily see how inauthentic Elizabeth Warren is. And that's why Bernie's got way better numbers.
Yeah.
And if you take the CNN poll, that's not the case. But, if the Google searches and YouTube clips and all the other stuff where people are using what's now traditional media. They say traditional media and new media, but really the new media, the internet, is now the traditional media. That's the main source of media.
It is.
Sanders is trending way better than anyone else. Tulsi Gabbard is trending higher than they're giving her credit for.
Yeah.
Andrew Yang is too.
Yeah, if there's a silver lining in all this about Elizabeth Warren, it's that she's slipping.
She's a psychopath.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way that someone could have this much dishonesty and have so little empathy in her heart and not be a complete and utter psychopath.
Yeah. Well, what's
it's time to go.
Okay, well, listen, thanks so much for joining us. You don't know what this means to us, to be building a community with you folks. And please join us again. We do this fortnightly and forthrightly right here at the Libation Station. Mm-hmm. And in the meantime, you can chime in. Let's have a conversation in the comment threads of our YouTube page, our Facebook page.
We have a Twitter page also.
Yeah, you bet, yeah.
Yep. You can also hop on late in the day.
Yes, I blog at least daily, and sometimes more than that, at late in the day. And I recently developed a Substack newsletter called Precipice, where my longer think pieces that are not quite so link rich. I'm saving Precipice for that kind of thing, and posted one just the other day that I'm pleased with. And
okay, we'll put the addresses in the show notes.
Okay, yeah.
And you can support us at patreon.com/barneyandclyde, and there will be some more Patreon only content coming very, very soon.
Yes.
I've got some really good ideas of stuff that we have in the archives already.
Okay.
That we're going to chop up and put in there, so it'll be really fun.
Okay, B&C's Greatest Hits Volume 1 or something. Right. Okay. Thanks again. And until we see you again,
be vigilant.
Be vigilant about your freedom.
All right.